Hey guys, this is Brian with Thunder Laser USA. We get asked this question a lot, and so I thought I would do a little tutorial, a little workflow, and show you what some of this is all about. So I'm going to show you about the camera stuff that you're seeing on the overlay right now, later on toward the end of this video. So for now, we're just not going to show that because we don't really need it. We'll get to that in a second. So um, the biggest thing about the laser is it could be almost fully autonomous. You can put in your piece of wood, hit the autofocus button, it'll focus for you. And then you've got your dual air assists, and this software selects between those automatically. And when you start a job or send a job over to the controller or over to the laser, you can have it automatically begin the process. So the exhaust fan will kick on, the laser will start processing, the correct air assist will come on. If you're doing engraving, the low stage air assist will be on and it's adjustable. And then when you switch to the cut layer, then the high air assist will be there. So you have that kind of granular control over what's going on, but it's pretty much automated. And there's a lot of fail safes built in, but a lot of it really has to do with the software and getting the files that you have or the designs that you want actually into there, and that can be intimidating. So LightBurn is the preferred control software. RDWorks will also work with these. They're Ruida controllers, but we primarily deal in LightBurn because it's a far superior solution. So let's say, for instance, I want to get out of the way about importing and exporting and other design software. If you have a glowforge or a Dremel or any of these other lasers, or even 3D printers or Cricuts, silhouette machines, any of that kind of stuff, you may be familiar with the vector formats, SVG, things like that. And LightBurn can natively import all of these different types of file extensions. So Adobe Illustrator files, PDFs, DXFs, some printer language, SVGs, LightBurn files, bitmaps, JPEGs, the list goes on. So you can natively import pretty much any file that you already have into LightBurn pretty easily. Now, if you like to design, for instance, in CorelDRAW, you're welcome to do that. You don't have to use LightBurn, but it does have some pretty powerful editing and design features, and we'll go over that in a minute. But let's take a look here for a second at CorelDRAW. We can open up a file in CorelDRAW, and we can select an object or whatever that we want, and you could go up to the file and you could export that, and then you could import it into LightBurn. But we have a script for CorelDRAW, so all we have to do is click the LightBurn icon up here, and if you'll notice, we can come back to LightBurn and it pulled it into LightBurn for us. So it's literally that easy. The workflow is that easy if you're using CorelDRAW. But anything that you use, AI files, for instance, let's get rid of this. Let's go back over here, and I've got an AI file. Actually, I don't have an AI file. Let's see if I can find one real quick. Quick access. There is an AI file, and you can literally just drag it right back over into LightBurn, and that's that same thing. What happens when CorelDRAW script happens, I believe it actually creates an AI file and then just has LightBurn open it. But for instance, if you have an SVG file, here's an SVG, we can just drag it right over into LightBurn. And then, so that's a pretty cool thing. So I want to drag in something here. Let me go back to the previous folder for just a minute. Bear with me. And I've got a monogram here, and I'm just going to drag this. It's a DXF file, and I'm just going to drag this in here, and that's way too big to be manageable. That's not practical. So let's make the width. I'm in millimeters now, but let's think in inches. All we have to do is switch. And let's just say they're about 4 inches. That would make a good size Christmas ornament. And we'll drag it down here on top of the table. So let's get in here where we can look at it. That's how easy it is that you can import something. Now I'm going to combine some elements here before we go into, after this we're going to do a full design from scratch within LightBurn, but I'm going to pull this element in and then use some of LightBurn's tools, and we need to add some text to this. So I'm just going to go right here and type in Barrett, and that is way too big, so get that down here where it's a little more manageable. We'll get it close, and then I'm going to pull these sides in a little bit, something like this. Pull these in approximately the same distance, something like this, and you just want these to barely go over and intersect with that other object there, just barely. And probably get a little closer, something like that, just enough to hang over like that. Okay, so once we get to that, I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to go over here now. I'm going to use the union tool. Now, if you don't know what these Boolean functions do, here's another really cool thing that happens in LightBurn. There's some interactive help. If you don't know what that union tool is for, you can hover over it and there'll be a tooltip. You can also hit F1 on your keyboard. Now, this is for Windows. I'm not sure on Mac. And it'll take you right to the documentation about what that tool does. So that's something that's really, really cool. So I've got my objects, and I'm going to select the union tool. And then when I do, look at what happened here. So if this were going to be a cut, I would want to make that a line. And then if we look at it in the preview, that's going to be your cut. So we just made a monogram for the Barrett. Now, if we want to make this a Christmas ornament, for instance, let's say we want to engrave this. We'll change this to a fill. And now we can get a nice, neat engraving, but still we need a way to cut that out. So what we can do is first let's add a circle here, and that's 0.15. Let's do 0.2, be a good little circle. And I'm going to select all of these objects, and you can either select them, with the drag tools, or you can hit Control A and it'll select all. I'm going to go up here and I want to center these vertically. And once I do that, I'm going to select these items again, and I'm going to go over here and use the Offset Shapes tool. And again, if you don't know what Offset Shapes does, you can hit the F1 key, and it'll bring you right over into the documentation for that tool. So once I do that, I'm going to select it, and you can see it's just going to make an outline. So I'm going to make this a little bit more of an outline so that this is a little bit more substantial up here, maybe. Maybe not quite that much, but you definitely want it to have a little bit of rigidity here in this area. And you can change some of the properties, make a bevel, make it cornered, and change the things like that. So let's just leave it like this. And it's made an artifact in here that wasn't here before. So, and we also need to make this a line and also this circle so it will cut. In order to do that, I can select this object, which is the outline we just made, and we just change the color. We'll make another layer, and it's already set to line. And if we look at the preview, we can see that it indeed is going to be a line. Now, our circle up here is still a fill. So we need to go up here and change it also to that blue layer, and we can click to change the color. Now, if you'll notice, there's this artifact in here that's left over from the offset function, and it's connected right now. And you can tell what is what by right-clicking over here, and it will flash whichever layer you're right-clicking. So anyway, I'm going to pick this, and we need to right-click and ungroup it so that they will not be tied together anymore. Then we can go in here and delete that artifact. Now I'm going to select all of this and group it again, and let's get back out and look at the extents. Now, let's say, for instance, that you have a piece of wood that's 15 inches by 15 inches. I'm going to use a tool layer here, and that is something that's used here on screen kind of for reference and things like that. It doesn't get outputted into the job, so it's ignored on output. But what we're going to do is just try to visualize how many of these ornaments you can fit on the piece of wood that you have. And that piece of wood is 15 by 15. Let's see, unlock. There we go. Now, there's an easy way that we can do this besides copy and paste or besides duplicate. And we can use an array. So I'm going to highlight the object or select it, and then I'm going to go to the create grid array. And if you'll notice, we can change the spacing, how many columns there are, and all that good stuff. And it looks like we're a little shy. I don't know, we could get close. That may just fit, but you get the idea. Now you've just created a bunch of these really quickly. There's also variable text, and in some instances, depending on how your artwork is set up, if you're doing labels or if you're doing ornaments or whatever it is, you can use serialized numbers. You can import a mail merge like a contact list from a spreadsheet, so that you could make an ornament that was the same ornament and have a different person's name in each one. So there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that this thing can do. So now that we've talked about the design software and how really ultimately easy it is, especially if you're not used to anything at all, you won't have any preconceptions. Let's go and look at the camera function now. So I'm going to turn the camera back on, and I'll show you how easy I'm actually going to do a job real quick. So I'm going to show the overlay, if it'll let me. It probably won't. We'll update the overlay, and there that is. So I have a piece of wood there. I think it's cedar. It's 5 millimeters in thickness. I didn't measure it, but we can get close, you know, by doing something like this. Actually, this isn't going to be super close, and I'll show you why in a minute. All we need to do if you want to run a job is, if you look over here, there's a sensor here and a sensor here, and we're looking at the preview window over here, and these are your autofocus sensors. And if you'll notice, I have my piece of wood right in the middle of where the beam is across here for the autofocus, so that I can autofocus on this material. So I'm going to go to the move panel, and wait, I want to show you what I was talking about before. If you're using the camera, this matters. Has to do with alignment. I'm going to draw a box around this piece the way it looks now, and I'm just going to leave that there for a minute. So let's focus, and if you'll watch, you'll see the bed come up. This distance right here will decrease. So I'm going to hit the focus button, and you can see it coming up. Now as it's coming up, the scale is also changing because you're getting closer to the camera, and that's why I drew that box. Okay, now we're focused. Now I'm going to update the overlay. Now look what happened. It got the scale and the alignment off. So whenever you use the camera, you always want to use autofocus, and calibrate the camera to that autofocus. Anyway, now that we've done that, let's make a keychain real quick, and then I'll let you guys go. I'm just going to select the text tool, and we'll just put thunder. And I'm not very design centric. I'm not super creative, but this will give you the idea. So let's make that. I think this was already let's get back over here. Okay, that's a cut. That'll be fine. And let's make a keychain. So we need a place to attach it. So we'll do something like that. And let's get it a little bit closer. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to cheat and just do the same thing over again. We're going to use the offset tool. And we're just going to make a keychain. Use my go-to. Something like that. Looks good. And we'll make the inside a fill. Now, we don't want it like this because we don't want it to cut first. So I'm going to choose that line. I'm going to move it down. So the order of operations, it'll do the engraving first and then cut this out. So now we've got that done. And let's see what size that is. That's about 5 inches long. I don't think it needs to be quite that. Let's make it 4 inches long. That should be fine. Now, as far as the settings go, there are some settings that need to be looked at. Let me cancel that for a minute. I'm going to go into the library, and since our machines are all calibrated and designed the same, we can have some intelligent conversations and actually have some baseline settings and libraries that you can upload to use for your specific thunder laser. So this is 5mm stuff, and if you don't have something close, you can just kind of look around. I'm gonna have to switch back to millimeters, though. I think in millimeters now. And let's see. There should be something close. There's 7mm. Let's set that to that. So we're gonna use that for the cut. Assign to layer, and that looks like I could probably go a little faster. No, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna trust it, even though it's baseline. And then on the fill, we don't have an engrave setting for that. However, cherry is pretty close. No thickness, there's engrave. Set that to fill, assign to layer. Now, I'm going to preview it real quick. We'll hit play. It's going to engrave, and it's going to cut it out, and it's going to do it in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. And I'm just going to put that up here. Whoa, undo. Control Z is your friend. That will undo stuff. I'm going to group that back together. We're almost done. And stick that right there. And I'm going to update the overlay again, make sure that all that still looks good. And I'm going to output that right there. So I've got the camera control on. Go back to laser and start. And here we go. And I know you probably won't be able to see it real good on that LightBurn camera. I don't have my other camera set up over there. But it'll give you a good idea about the workflow in general and the time you're looking at to do something like this. So it'll engrave thunder. Let's see, make this a little better. There we go. Now to cut the little circle. Now to cut the outside. And I'm probably going way too slow. I could probably do that about 30mm per second. Maybe 25. Natural woods cut really well. And it's done. And that pretty much covers it. That was a complete workflow from start to finish. So anyway, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, go to our support forum, support.thunderlaserusa.com. And if you have any questions, you can find our phone number there or on our main site. There's also a link to the support site on our main site. If you have any questions, let us know. Hope that helps. Have a good day.